to host this thing, and I've just heard some phenomenal stuff over the last 9 weeks that we've been doing this from everybody. And I don't know, my higher power must have put it in my head that it'd be kind of cool to have 12 of you back to do all 12 steps. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to open the meeting with the Serenity Prayer in English, and then I'm going to ask Andrea to do it in Spanish and Jorn to do it in Norwegian. And then each speaker will do 5 minutes on the step that they have chosen, and probably between step 3 and 4, or 4 and 5, and yeah, we'll just throw them in there a couple times. We're going to do the Serenity Prayer in a few other languages, and I posted them in chat who's doing what. And so with that, let's open the meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer in English first. God, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And Andrea, I believe I made you a co-host. You can unmute yourself and do it in Spanish, please. Andrea E.
Dios,
There you go.
concédeme. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Dios, concédeme serenidad para aceptar las cosas que no puedo cambiar, valor para cambiar aquellas que sí puedo y sabiduría para reconocer la diferencia.
Thank you, Andrea. And Jorn in Norwegian, please. Try to find Jorn. Go. Jorn, you're unmuted, sir.
Gud, gi meg sinnsro til å godta de ting jeg ikke kan forandre, mot til å forandre de ting jeg kan, og forstand til å se forskjell.
Thank you, Jorn. Well, let's start it off, folks. The very first speaker is Chicago John. He just laid it last week, and I'd love to hear what you got to say about the first step. How about it, John? Go for it, my friend. Chicago John, you're unmuted.
Oh, hey folks, my name's John. I'm an alcoholic. I'm one drink away from a drunk. It's good to be here. It's great to be sober. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. The first step, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Well, for me, I know most of you because we've been in meetings together and I've shared before. But that night, September 19th, 1983 at 10:10 p.m. in the Kaiserslautern Hauptbahnhof, the Kaiserslautern main train station, when I came out of that blackout and stepped onto that cobblestone train platform and looked up and saw Kaiserslautern Hauptbahnhof and looked at the clock ticking. It was bright as day and it was removed. I became instantly sober. The alcohol didn't affect me. I looked up, I threw my hands up in the air and I laughed out loud and I said, okay, I got the message. And it was over. I was done. And a couple of days later, I walked into that first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in the basement of the guard shack. And I felt unlike I'd ever felt in my life. I was in a room with about 15 to 20 young people. There were soldiers and airmen from Ramstein Air Force Base, and there was an old guy, and it was dark, and we were sitting around a table on card tables, 4 card tables put together, and the folding metal chairs. And I was in a hospital robe, and I was sick. I was skinny. I was shaking. People were giving me cigarettes, and I was really enjoying that. And they started to speak about not drinking, and each one of them would have 15 days, 20 days, and I remember looking at them, and they were talking about that first step because the meeting focused on the first step, and they kept repeating, admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable, and I really had no problem accepting that. I knew I was powerless over alcohol because from the time I picked up my first drink when I was 13 or 14, I sat down for a few close drinks with a few close friends. And when I got up from the table, 11 years had gone by and I was out of control. And I didn't have a self. I say it over and over. I was a dead soul carrying around a corpse. I was an animal. I was driven by a compulsion completely outside of my control to tell anybody anything, to do anything, to steal anything, to cheat, connive, hook, jab, sell anything to get my supply of alcohol, because that's what made me alive. When I started to get better, I've read this 1,000 times, maybe 3,000 times. You know what? That honesty. I was powerless over alcohol. My life was unmanageable. Openness. I learned how to spill my guts, and whatever came into my head, I let it out, and most of it didn't make any sense, but I felt comfortable in the fellowship, in the room, and there was no judgment. We didn't have fucking chat rooms. There was no judgment in the meeting, because as soon as somebody came out with some judgment in those meetings, punches were thrown, chairs were thrown, and people were dragged out of meeting rooms. And that was exciting. I knew I was in the right place the first time I saw a fist fight in the meeting. But then I started reading, and that willingness to change, that willingness. What did willingness mean? I was conquered, beaten, and destroyed. I would do anything. If you folks had told me to strip my pants off, stand on my head, and pray to some God 20 times a day, and that would keep me sober, I would have done it, because the people in the room, you people, had done it before me. A willingness to do whatever I was told to do simplified the program for me. Study the AA book. Don't just read it. They told me to go to meetings, and I still do at every available opportunity, whether I'm at home or in some other city. Attending meetings has never been a chore for me, nor have I attended them with a feeling of just doing my duty. Meetings are relaxing and refreshing to me after a hard day. They said, get active. God won't goose you in your ass if you're sitting on it, Philly Bill used to say. So I helped whenever I could, and I still do. A spiritual experience to me meant attending meetings, seeing a group of people, all there for the purpose of helping each other, hearing the 12 steps and the 12 traditions read at a meeting, and hearing the Lord's Prayer, which in an AA meeting has such great meaning. Thy will be done, not mine. You're God, I'm not. A spiritual awakening soon came to me, trying each day to be a little more thoughtful, more considerate, a little more courteous to those with whom I came in contact. The serenity prayer in that meeting, or in the meeting off post, went like this. Gott, gebe mir die Gelassenheit, Dinge hinzunehmen, die ich nicht ändern kann. Den Mut, Dinge zu ändern, die ich ändern kann, und die Weisheit, das eine von dem anderen zu unterscheiden. Thank you for letting me share, and thank you each for keeping me sober today.
Yeah, John, thank you so much for that. Step one, love you, man. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Nina, step two. Could you read what step two is and tell us what your experience with step two is?
Sure, my name is Nina. I am an alcoholic. Step two is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. You know, for an alcoholic like me, when I got here, it took me a minute to even get through step one. But when you wanted me to believe that there was something greater than myself, well, having been beat down and had some really bad experiences in church and with religious leaders, and having been a minister of myself at one point in a galaxy far, far away, I was doing my Janet Jackson of what have you done for me lately? So you wanted me to turn to kind of believe in something that was greater than me. And I was a soldier. I was in the military. I wasn't surrendering to anything. So my sponsor had to kind of approach me a little bit differently. And she told me to look up what each one of those words meant in step two. And it was interesting because I went back and redid that again. And what I came to was, when it says came to recover a consciousness, to believe means to accept or concede something as true or a manifestation of reality. a power greater than me, an authority that's greater than me, something that has dominion over me. That word could means that it is able if permitted. Able if permitted, right? And then restore means to put back to an original form, an original state, to repair, to give back, to sanity. You know, the Latin root word of sanity is sanitas, which means health, like sanatorium, right? Reasonable or rational behavior, wisdom. So when I had to look up all of those words and I did it again, I was like, wow. But it's that authority that's greater than myself. In other words, for me, it meant either God was, Creator was, Buddha was, Tifankara was, or ego was, Nina was. And there was no dividing that too. There was not straddling that fence. Either God was or Nina was. There was none of this. Well, maybe we can do a switch hit kind of thing. I couldn't do it because what had been shown to me that was my life was unmanageable. It was unmanageable by my house going in foreclosure. It was unmanageable that I couldn't stop after one sip, one drink. It was unmanageable that I had thrown away marriages. It was unmanageable that, so there was no doubt in my mind that life was unmanageable. But now you wanted me, y'all encouraged me to say, okay, then since you can't do it, give it over. No human power could have relieved us our alcoholism. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I got some kind of power. What I learned through this program was that I had, the only power that I really had was choice. And that was it. And I had to choose that, come into believe that I was going to give my, come into believe that a power greater than myself could. And that word could is very important because there's a condition on that. And that condition is if I allow. One of the other things that I remembered was that in that second step, that my lack of power in the defense against that first drink, that was my problem. The solution is very spiritual, right? There is a solution, and the solution is simple: God. A 3-letter word that has so much infinite and finite power. The other thing about that step 2 is that God is constantly, Creator is constantly revealing itself to me, right? I grow. Each time I grow, I get just a little glimpse of how omnipotent and awesome Creator is. I mean, I haven't had a desire to drink since May 31st of 2003. But every time that I wake up and I start getting caught up in ego, oh God, I don't feel like it today. Oh God, I don't want to. Creator reminds me, turn that light switch on. You got electricity. You're not dead. Creator reminds me, you might only have $10 in your checking account, but you still got $10. That's $10 more than you would have had if you were out there drinking. Creator reminds me that I got a car. Creator reminds me that I have sponsors. Creator reminds me that I have sponsees. Creator reminds me that all I got to do is press a damn button and I can go to a meeting at any time. Creator reminds me of that. But when I first got here, I had no gratitude. There was no way. And Creator kept telling me, what have I done for you lately? You're going to be singing a real different tune when you finally realize I've done everything for you. All I asked you to do was show up. So step 2, came to believe that a power greater than myself. When I got it, y'all, I got it. And there has never been a day that I've ever turned back from knowing that there was a power greater than me. Have I been restored to sanity? I've been restored to a state of mind. I've been restored to a state of mind that is reasonable. And that is only by the grace of God, the gifts of my sobriety and you guys. So with that, I'll pass.
Amazing as always, Nina. Thank you so much for that. Love the way you break it down every time. Nina, she's got like an AA nightstick, man. She'll beat it into you. I mean, you just can't help it. It's just fantastic. I love you, Nina. Oh my God. Jamie Santana, my second favorite truck driver in the whole wide world, and none of us would be sitting here looking at these laptops or sitting on the chairs that we're sitting in if it wasn't for the truckers out there. So I'm so appreciative for you and all the work that the truck drivers doing. Jamie, what do you got for us on step 3, my friend?
Well, I don't have pastrami for you tonight, Adam. Hi, family. My name.
Boot 'em. That's it. Boot 'em.
Hi, family. My name is Jamie. I am a recovered alcoholic, and great. Yeah, I'm very humbled to be in such great presence of so many of God's wonderful children. And I say recovered because Nina just explained to us how that becomes, and what a beautiful share. The book tells me I've become recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. So I love here on page 29 of the book, and of course, before we even get into the book, we're in the forwards and the preface and all that, and it's already talking about God and the relationships with Him. But I really love this part right here on page 29. Each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language from his own point of view the way he established his relationship with God, and I'll do the best I can with that. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a recovering Mormon also, so for those of you who are snickering in the background, that's like double indemnity. The thing is by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a broken believer. I was somewhere between agnostic and fighting with atheism, and John described it so lovely of just not being able to do it anymore. Nina just described that belief that there's something there, and on September 3rd, 1990, I did my third step, laying paralyzed in a bed. I actually did first, second, third step that night or early that morning. I could not wiggle a finger, gurgle a sound from my throat, wiggle a toe, move a muscle or anything. Laid there completely paralyzed, breathing. I could hear me breathe, and my brain could think well. And I just simply said, I changed the bailout prayer. You guys are familiar with the bailout prayer, right? If you get me out of this, I'll never do it again. I changed the prayer right then and there to, Father, if you get me through this, I will do anything. Getting clean and sober was not my plan. So made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. I didn't realize that's what I was doing at the moment. And I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and you guys taught me that. You taught me what John and Nina just talked about and what everybody else is going to talk about tonight. But what does that mean? For me, it means my thoughts and my actions. I'm trying to change my behaviors, and I don't discover that until I get into step 4, what that stuff really is. And for me, I find out what that is in my 4th column. If you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous, or even if you're old to Alcoholics Anonymous and you're still struggling with God, we have this beautiful chapter called the Chapter to the Agnostics, and it's to help you find that relationship, whatever it may be for you. I can't say that, but only you can say what it is for you. I can tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, my relationship has evolved. It looks different at 10 years sober than it did the day I got sober, looked different at 20 years sober, and now at almost 30. It still looks different because it keeps growing and continues to evolve. I like to tell folks, if you're struggling with the idea of a higher power, go stand at the ocean and let the waves come crashing against your feet. And as you feel that undertow go out from underneath you, stand there and actually command that water to stop moving. And if it does, you might be a pretty awesome power in this universe. And if not, I would just absolutely just encourage you to be open-minded to the idea that there might be something greater than yourself. And see, with step 3, we all have to have a starting point, and that's what the idea of the God of your own understanding is a starting point. I will close with this. In the 12 and 12, last paragraph, and I'm going to paraphrase here, says something to the effect that when we take the free will, that our problem was misuse of willpower. And when we take the free will that God has given us and we make it align and conform with what His will for us, that is the proper use of willpower. That's what's given me this lovely journey of, 10,888 days today, one day at a time. Two most important days, the day I got sober and today. Everything else is just in between. So, little spoon represents Jamie's will. It's like a ping pong ball. It's all over the place. It's stirring shit up everywhere I go. The big spoon represents God's will. It's pretty solid. It is consistent. It is full of love. It is so much larger than my will is. And when I take and I pull my will into God's will will completely eclipse my will, and it becomes a place of warmth, safety, connection, and intuitive feeling. And then what happens is I see her, or I see a new car, or a new toy, or I want this or that, and I jump right back out there into my wheel, and I start doing things my way and running the show again. And it doesn't take me very long to get uncomfortable doing that today in my life. And I take and I pull myself back into God's will, and it's the place I want to live. You know, for me, ladies and gentlemen, it's very simple. My question to God every morning is, Father, how can I serve you and how can I serve your children? And I'm just one of God's kids trying to help some of God's other kids. Thank you for having me. I am in the presence of God's great children. Thank you.
Wow, Jamie, fantastic as always, my friend. Love you so much. Thank you for being a part of this. Wouldn't be the same without you, that's for sure. Gene, would you read step 4 for us, please, and tell us what step 4 means to you, sir?
My name is Gene. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic from Des Moines, Iowa. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves, giving honor to God for His grace, strength, mercy, joy, and happiness is truly by His grace, your fellowship, sponsorship, 12 steps and 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. That page 20 says we have recovered from a hopeless condition of mind and body. 85 says, but we're not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. I'd like to read you something from page 373 because I want all you guys to know that no matter how good I may think I sound, that if it wasn't for this program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would not be here. And that's why I always like to come from the book, because I want everyone, especially the newcomers, the habitual relapsers, and those who know that the stuff is in the book. I got my stuff from the book to get sober. Page 373. I know that I took the third step, turning my will and life over to a higher power that night, because I began writing a 4th step inventory the next day. And I continued to write until I did the 5th step with my sponsor. I can tell you right now, I was full of religion. I'm on my 3rd relapse. I'm at a halfway house. I look back up at the steps on the wall, and I said, well, you know, I kind of understand step 1. I kind of understand step 2. I said, but step 3, and what I realized, I hadn't taken step 3 for this. What I had thought and was standing on, I got baptized 25 years ago. God's the greatest power. I don't have to do this because I know who the greatest power is. Well, I realized after the 3rd relapse, my stuff wasn't working. So I go upstairs and kneel by my bed. Now, I got to tell you something. At this time, I didn't have a sponsor yet. I was still arguing with him. I was still trying to find my way in the program. I was doing NA and AA. So I was still trying to find my way around. But I realized that the step said, 3rd step said, made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God. I said, well, let me go upstairs and do that. I go upstairs, I get on my knees, and I simply repeat the 3rd step. I got up, and something said, what are you afraid of? I go, huh? I looked around the room, and you can believe this or not, it's all right with me. I'm just telling you what happened. And I go, huh? And he says, yeah, Gene, what are you afraid of? You got backup. I immediately went downstairs, got me a piece of paper, and started writing a 4-step. Now, I knew I was going to do this 4-step, so I got a 4-step from the Powell Treatment Center. Because what I realized, guys, and been around, and I had been, several treatment 4-steps, everybody got a different 4-step. And what I realized is I had always did them for an assignment. I had never done a 4-step for me to reconcile my past with my present so that I could have a better future. So I said, well, I had already had the inventory. I sat down and I started writing. And every day after work, I wrote. Every day when I came home, I would say a little prayer, the serenity prayer, or just pray for God to reveal the truth. Because I needed the truth. No one has lied to me more than I have lied to myself. Deceived me, conned me, manipulated me, all those types of things I had done to myself more than anybody had ever done to me. And I needed the truth about my situation because you understand I'm on my 3rd relapse here in 2 years. As I started writing, I began to see from 0 to 14 a little shit. He broke out windows and stole bottles and, kind of got in a fight. And then I saw this person between 16, 17 when he started weed and started a little drinking to 41. I got sober at 41. I saw a complete fool. And more importantly, what I saw was my behaviors under the influence of alcohol. And page 31 said other deception, and other experimentation and deception. And I realized that I could no longer live under that. And as I keep writing, I realized, I was like, oh my God, here is a 3rd person. Here is a person that have not yet finished his 4-step, haven't gotten a complete sponsor yet, haven't gotten a complete program yet, isn't quite working a complete program yet. What could he become? So for me, it was no longer a task. Most people look at the 4-step as a task, as a job, as something to be, oh my God, my 4-step. I looked at it as the first chance in my life to reconcile my past with my present so I could be free of all the shoulda, coulda, woulda, wish I hadn't done, guilt, shame, remorse, anger, resentment, fear, intolerance, unforgiving, unacceptable, unaccepting. And you know what? I like that inventory from Powell because it had all those words in it. See, my 3rd relapse told me, Gene, you a lot more than fear, sex, anger, and whatever the other one is in the big book. I knew I was more than that. I needed to get down to all the causes and conditions. And I got to tell you something. As I'm writing this thing, the truth will set you free, but first it's going to hurt. I had to shed a few tears. I didn't boo-hoo, but I shed a few tears because I'm looking at this stuff and going, oh my God, look what you've done. Look who you hurt. I no longer wanted to be that person. And the 4-step was my opportunity to take this big bag of past shit that first of all, I got to tell you something, it's past. I ain't never going to undo it. But the 4-step allows me a chance to see how not to do it in the future. So I was so grateful. After I got my 4-step done, before I got it done, I want to share with you how do you know when you're done? I sat down and I would let my mind run through my past. If I came up with anything, I wasn't done. I did that for 3 days. And on the 3rd day, I let my mind just run for like 5-6 minutes. And I did not find anything in my past that I couldn't live with that wasn't on my 4-step. I knew I was done. I had already made an appointment with the chaplain at the Chemical Dependence Center. I called him up. I said, I'm done. I went up and did my 5th step with him. My 4-step was 38 pages long. I had 68 resentment and angers. I got to tell you something. I'm a free man today because of the fourth step of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I did it for me, not for an assignment. Thanks for letting me share.
Fantastic. As always, Gene, thank you so much, sir, for being a part of that. That was great. I'm going to introduce now Victor. Victor is going to do Serenity Prayer in a language I've never heard of or don't know how to pronounce. So, Victor, go for it, my friend.
He was just knocked off. There he is.
There he is.
Thanks, I'm back now. Adam just happened to turn off right then when I was doing it. Okay, so I'll do it now. Let me get settled.
We can come back if you need a minute. Let's do it after Max. Max, go ahead with step 5 there, Max. Max from Exotic South Jersey. Go ahead, buddy.
My name is Max. I am an alcoholic, and I am sober today only by the grace of God and the fellowship of this program. My sobriety date is August 2nd, 1992, and it wasn't until the 5th step that I realized that I could stay sober. Fifth step that I realized that I could stay sober. And I had that list, and I went to my sponsor with the list, and then I had those items, the 1 or 2 items on the bottom of the list that I was going to go to my grave with, that I wasn't going to tell anyone about. And as things were going pretty well, and as I talked to my sponsor and he didn't say anything negative, I kept going. And let me read the step. It says, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. I was told this isn't it doesn't say I wrote an autobiography. That's not what this is. This is an inventory of what's in stock, what's on the shelves, what's not on the shelves. And so as I talked with my sponsor, I got down to those last 2 items, and I was like, am I going to tell him? Am I not going to tell him? And the one that I waited till last that I told him that I was embarrassed about, had a shame, a lot of confusion, I shared it to him, and he said, I experienced the same thing. And there was this instant relief. I was taught that the primary purpose of the 5th step is to get rid of my guilt. It's hard to be useful when you are full of guilt. I was also told that it says you tell another for humility, you tell God for forgiveness, and you tell yourself so you have better understanding. This step is critical. Why is it critical? In the big book, it says, if we skip this vital step, we might not overcome drinking. That seemed pretty significant when I read that. I wanted this program. I wanted to overcome drinking. I didn't want to be a drunk. I didn't want to be a lush. I didn't want to be a liar or cheat. I didn't want to be those things. And it says, if you don't do this step, you might not be able to overcome those things. And so that was enough. That was like a red flag warning. If I skip this, it talks about in the 12 and 12, if I do this piecemeal, that won't be good enough. You have to do it in its entirety. And then my favorite paragraph in the big book comes with the 5th step promises. We read the 9th step promises often at meetings, not so much in Zoom meetings, but in 3D meetings, we read about the promises. But the problem with the 9th step promises, they come after the 9th step. They are way down there. They're out of reach. And so as a newcomer, you're like, how will I ever get there? And you read it at every meeting. But there's 5th step promises. And the 5th step's right there. 1, 2, 3, you're doing 1, 2, 3. All I got to do is 4, and wow, I'm right at 5. These promises are accessible to anyone. The newcomer, this is accessible. 9th step, a little further down the road. But listen to these promises. This gets me fired up. We pocket our pride and we go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. I thought crannies were only in English muffins, so I was excited to see that word. I love the language of the big book, cranny. Come on. Thanks, Bill W. Once we have taken this step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. I was never delighted in my drinking. I was cantankerous, mean, resentful, judgmental. I was not delighted. But it says when we take this step, we're going to be delighted. We can look the world in the eye. I couldn't look you in the eye. I knew you by the tops of your shoes, not by your face. I was ashamed, I was embarrassed, or I was braggadocious and looked right over you. But this says, I'm going to be able to look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. I couldn't ever be alone. And if I was drinking alone, it was only so I could isolate, but I didn't want to be alone. And then when I was in a crowd of people, I felt alone. But this says, take this step, and you're going to be alone, and you're going to have a perfect peace and ease. Our fears, you know, the ones that we just wrote in the 4th step, and all the things are bracketed with fear. It says our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs. In other words, we might have had certain spiritual thoughts about God, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. That feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. If you still have the obsession to drink, if you still have that craving away. So many of us, when we've said we are recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body, it's because that obsession to drink has been removed. It tells us in this 5th step, it often comes quickly. It often happens strongly after the 5th step. If that hasn't happened for you, don't go away from the 5th step. Do the 5th step. The obsession to drink will be removed. And it says we feel we're on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. For the first time, I'm walking with God. I'm walking with God on this broad highway. Why? Because I've gotten rid of the guilt. I've gotten rid of the shame. I have a moniker of humility because I shared it with somebody else. God's extended forgiveness to me. And now I'm starting to understand myself. I'm actually able to have some sober judgment about who and what I am. All because of the 5th step. If you're concerned with the promises way down the line, their promise is a lot closer. Do the 5th step. If we skip this vital step, we might not overcome drinking. Overcome drinking. Stay sober. God bless. Thanks so much.
Amazing, Max. Amazing as always. Wow. What can you say about that? I can't wait to re-listen to this. This is being recorded, folks. So you'll be able to hear it again, and I can't wait to rehear that, man. Max, you do a fantastic job as always. Max is in the 164 room that Kimberlea runs. You'll see Kimberlea for step 12. We're going to go back to Victor. Victor, you can unmute yourself and do the serenity prayer for us, please. I'd have to unmute you since you got booted off. Here we go. How about now, Victor?
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Adam. Ten more, probably. Kia ora whānau, te apua, tuku mai e ngākau, mahaki ki ahau, kia tautonu te rangi mārie, i rotu i te mūtanga, e te kaha me te whakatika, i ngā marotanga, kia mātou, kia marama, hoki ngā rereketanga. Ora.
And go to the 6th step. Kangaroo Dave, one of the very first speakers I had in the Detroit International, the very first week. Kangaroo Dave, my friend from Australia. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you, Adam, and thank you for the honor to speak. May I ask all of your 91 people on the Zoom just to place me in the care of your God while I speak. Thank you. Step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. I was advised that each step, the seed of each step, is in the step before. So the seed of step 6 is in step 5. And it says, this is a step that separates the men from the boys and the women from the girls. I added that. And that's been my experience. I come from a Christian background, and there's a story about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And there was a tree of good and evil. And God told Adam and Eve not to take the fruit of the good and evil tree. But you see, the serpent said to Eve, go on, take that piece of fruit. And she did. You become like God. And then she gave it to Adam. And, we're not supposed to. And Adam, you women are very influential. And Adam said, okay, I'll take piece of the fruit. And then bango, they suddenly realized they were naked and hid from God. And he said, well, you've done the wrong thing. Piss off and get out of this Garden of Eden. You're going to have pain in childbirth and you're going to work from the sweat of your brow for the rest of your life until I send somebody to recommit our relationship. Step 6 for me is to be able to recommit my relationship with the God of my understanding by being a better human being. Truly, I stand in front of you now after 29 years of not drinking, from Mother's Day of 1991, a man that's transformed, and a man that's transforming his defects of character. You see, it's a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty for me, and step 6 asks me, after step 5, to look at those defects of character, that manner of living that I was living when I drank, that needs to change. And it's tough. I don't want to change, and yet I need a power greater than myself, the God of my understanding, to give me the power to change. Step 3 says I place my will and my life into the care of God. Some people miss the word care, and they say I have to hand my will and my life over to God. He doesn't want it in my experience. He doesn't want me to be God. He doesn't want to take away my free will. So I need all the free will I can to work on my defects of character, but I can't get rid of them without an extra help. That's why I say, will God remove all these defects of character? What he does, as I understand it, and I don't represent Alcoholics Anonymous, I represent my opinion, trying to align myself with Alcoholics Anonymous and their experience, that he gives me the power to change my defects of character and get rid of them. I have to use all my willpower in the world to stop drinking. He gives me the power to, because on my own willpower I can't do it. So he gives me power. And so now, if I had my Charlie ready to get him to remove my defects of character, he doesn't actually remove them. He gives me the power so that I remove them. Because I've got to work on my life. I can't blame the serpent. I can't blame Eve for the behavior. I can't blame my alcoholism for my behavior. I have to blame myself. And it's only through the power of God and his care that I can work on these defects of character. So I become entirely ready to have God give me the power that I can use my willpower with his power to transform my way of living, my manner of living, which it says in chapter 5. By being rigorously honest. So it's truth and honesty that assists me in removing my defects of character, and that's an ongoing process for the rest of my life. You see, I'm here today, and if the only two things you know about me is my name and I'm alcoholic, basically most of you. Others know more about me than you do. And I often say, and I do, please don't believe a word I tell you. You have to work out whether I'm telling you the truth, because my experience is my truth. And my life has been transformed, and I'm the happiest man in the world today. I'm free, because I continually work on my defects of character with the power that God's given me to remove them. And all I want to do now is to be the best human being I possibly can be. Not to be God, because I believe from my experience, as the story of Adam and Eve said, don't eat because you'll become like God. That's what the serpent said to him, to Eve and Adam. God doesn't want me to be God. He wants me to be fully human and fully alive, not humanly perfect. There's a big message in that statement. Fully human, fully alive, not humanly perfect. If I become humanly perfect, I become God. He doesn't want competition. That's what step 6 reminds me of. And thank you so much, Adam, for allowing me to speak. Thank you, everyone.
Wow, Dave, just amazing. I'm telling you, I can listen to you talk all day. I love you so much. So happy to have met you and have you in my life and been a part of my recovery, a huge part of my recovery. Thank you so much, Dave. You know what, Jamie, we're going to go ahead and let Lori do the Serenity Prayer in French. She offered as well. And Lori, you are unmuted.
Hi, you guys. Lori Alcoholic. I have 330 days today.
Oh, yeah, 330.
I'm going to try not to break everyone's eardrums from screaming so loud. I was just teaching a yoga class, so you guys were joining me in that. Alors, la prière de la sérénité. Mon Dieu, donnez-moi la sérénité d'accepter les choses que je ne peux plus changer. Le courage de changer les choses que je peux et la sagesse d'en connaître la différence. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for doing that for us and being a part of this meeting. That was awesome. Danny D, let's continue with Danny D. Danny, could you tell us about the step and your experience with it, sir? Danny took me to my very first AA meeting out in California. He's my uncle's best friend and an amazing man, and I'm so thankful to have him in my life as well. Danny?
Well, Adam, thanks for that great introduction. You know, I am an alcoholic, and my name is Dan. And, as a result of attending Alcoholics Anonymous, my sobriety date is March 25th, 2011. I get to experience miracles in my life. I get to meet some of the most incredible people. Everybody here has been so well spoken, and you set the bar pretty high, so I hope I can keep it up here. But I was placed in a position to have Adam enter my life. I really believe that my higher power has a design to everything. I've just come into this realization in the last 2 or 3 years. As part of my spiritual journey is that that my higher power has a master plan. Everything is as it should be, and I'm right where I belong today in the present. And I get to say that with authenticity and really come from the heart with it. And that gives me great comfort. As a result, I don't future trip. I don't really have much anxiety or very much worry anymore, because I just remind myself that there's a purpose to everything. I'm right where I belong at this present moment. And that's great. I want to thank some of the people that spoke already. I know I'm going to get into step 10 here, and I'll get through that. But I noticed that Jamie on covering step 3. Thank you, Jamie. And I noticed your teacher had a very simple message. It is what it is, and that goes with my what I've stated is that I feel that there's a purpose to everything, and we're all right where we belong. And what a beautiful time to be here, sharing from all across the country and around the world in this great international meeting that Adam has established. I got so much admiration for you. Yes, I was there at a time when you had hit your bottom, and at that time of absolute demoralization. Ironically, that's where we have to get. And as somebody who has sponsored others and I changed careers, I worked in the field of recovery. This is right. That's where we like to get them. That's where we catch them in our net. Newcomers, that come in with that desperation and understanding that we need this program in order to save our life. And if we approach it that way, we do get to experience the miracles. We do fully get to, experience the benefits of working the 12 steps. Step 10, step 10 reads that we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. In the men's step study that I took part in my first year of sobriety, I I was told to look at this and to practice it on a daily basis, and to understand that in this daily practice, it keeps us out of trouble, and it keeps us focused on being joyful and useful to others. I wasn't crazy about taking a daily inventory. When I got to step 10, I had pretty much had it with inventory and sharing that inventory. It really wiped me out. But a couple of people have mentioned that the process of these steps set us free, and it's all about freedom. As I said, I was attending a men's step study, and again, it was ironic how I began that. I was in treatment with a young recovering heroin addict named Max, and he approached me. We were in treatment every day together in this outpatient program, and I kind of became his big brother because he couldn't drive. I would pick him up and drive him to our outpatient program every day, and he got a sponsor before I did. And he came to me and he said, "Hey, my sponsor is requiring me to attend this men's step study, and it's invitation only, and these guys are dead serious about working the steps. I mean, it's no screwing around. But they're all older than me and have much more time, and it's very intimidating. It would really be cool if you came." And I felt like I needed to take them up on that offer, and I was so glad I did. And that taking part in that step study program on a weekly basis with those men, the first 2 or 3 weeks, I wanted to fight every man in that room. I felt like they were attacking me. And then I hung around long enough to understand that they were there to try to help me save my life and help me change my life. And I came to a point where I loved every man in that room. I may not have liked every one of them, but I don't have to do that. It doesn't say so in our program. But I do find that I need to express my love and to find the love within everybody that is there. And they were all there to help me. And so I'm so grateful that I had that basis and to have a thorough understanding of the steps. When I got to step 10, they handed me this piece of paper here. I'll just hold it up for a second. Can't really see it that well. But they gave me my step 10 instructions, and it was laminated. And my step guide and sponsor at the time said, "We give this to you laminated because it's meant to be your nightstand, your bedside copy. We want it with an easy reach so that you can reach for it at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day." And the instructions were simply very similar to the instructions that have been passed along to all of us. Instructed to, read the step, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. This is the point where we get to start to practice our program and put it to practical use in our lives. What does it mean when we say we're working a program if all it amounts to is just attending meetings, even if they're Zoom meetings, and we get a sponsor and we work the steps, but the real test is when we put these principles into practice. The principle from step 10 is perseverance. We will continue to push forward and to continue to grow spiritually and continue to take this personal inventory. And when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. The first paragraph in the 12 and 12 on step 10 reads, "As we work the first 9 steps, we prepare ourselves for the adventure of a new life. But when we approach step 10, we commence to put our AA way of living to practical use day by day in fair weather or foul. Then comes the acid test. Can we stay sober, keep an emotional balance, and live to good purpose under all conditions?" I like the way they stated it that, this is the acid test. This is where the rubber meets the road. Can we remain sober and have emotional balance? Another blessing was through the people I met and this current sponsor I have. I was invited to a meeting, and the focus was on emotional sobriety. And there I came to learn that, we can all obtain this physical sobriety. If we stick with it and we put together enough time, eventually, hopefully, with the grace of God, that obsession and that craving for alcohol is lifted. and we no longer crave or obsess over it. I had that miracle happen to me in my first year of sobriety. I didn't realize it when it happened. It was only in looking back that I realized that that miracle manifested itself. But, you know, emotional sobriety is elusive. You know, we can, like I say, we can obtain that that physical sobriety. We can go into a 30 or 60-day treatment program and live in a bubble and get some time together and start to be relieved of that craving and obsession. But, you know, emotional sobriety is elusive and it takes some effort. Step 10 enables us to do that. Step 10 keeps me out of trouble. Step 10 keeps me from having to do a complete overhaul and do a step 4, as you know, a lot of my friends in the program do a step 4 on an annual basis. I've done that with my sponsor, who I've had for most of this time, but neither of us believe that we need that major overhaul if we practice step 10. You know, as a result of this pandemic, and I was talking with my sponsor, I think a lot of us are having a condition that we're experiencing. It can be, you know, really trying and to get us in a bad place emotionally, mentally, and physically if we don't practice our principles. I mentioned to my sponsor, you know, I in all the meetings I've gone to over the years, a lot of times I hear an old timer who has considerable time say that he still does a daily inventory, and I gotten away from that. You know, I practiced it for the first couple of years, and then somewhere along the way, I stopped practicing that. And I said, you know, at this time, I think we need to practice that. He agreed with me, and we dug in, and we started, putting together some bullet points that we wanted to focus on and to do a daily inventory because these are very trying times. You know, I have a housemate that I share the house with. I'm too old to say I have a roommate, but I have a wonderful friend I've known since high school that is a very blessing that I get to share a house with him on the beach here in Ventura, California on Silver Strand Beach. And if any of you are ever out here, look me up. We have a Sunday morning meeting at 9 a.m. called Serenity in the Sand. And it's fantastic. And it's the first live meeting that's starting to get together rather than a Zoom meeting. They are able to put that together because we're outside and we practice social distancing. So that's just a little bit of what I had to say. I know I rattled on there. I hope some of it was good and useful to some of you. Welcome to all the newcomers. Thank you again, Adam. God bless you,
sir. Thank you so much. You know, that was my fault, Danny. Danny had asked for step 10, and step 10 was taken, so I just gave him step 7, and I forgot to tell him. So we'll either hear step 10 twice, or maybe Jim can do step 7. Either way, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't be an AA meeting if we didn't mess something up, right?
Yeah, well, I like it when you spring stuff on me. I do that work, but I don't have any notice. So
my bad.
Feel free to come back to me.
Blame my higher power. It probably meant to happen, you know. So somebody needed to hear what you had to say on step 10, I'm sure. So, Clint, how about step 8, buddy? Can you read step 8 first and tell us what it means to you?
Hey, Adam, would you like me to do something on 7, or don't worry about it?
Don't worry. We'll just keep going in order, and then after you, Nina's going to do the Serenity Prayer in Italian for us.
All right, thank you. First and foremost, my name's Clint M. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. My sobriety date is May 15th of 2018. And each one of you, most everyone on here that I know most everybody have all been a part of keeping me sober one day at a time and helped me get through a lot of things that I could never have done without you guys. So thank you. God bless you for that. Step 8, excuse me. Out of brain tumor here for some reason. I got 800 things going because I was, made a list of all the persons we'd harmed, made and became willing to make amends to them all. In the 12 and 12, it tells me this is the next step in learning to live with others is a fascinating adventure. Obstacles, reluctance to forgive, not admission of wrongs in others, purposely forgetting. You know, in step 8, we did a lot of that. We wrote down in the 4th step. And I know for this alcoholic, there's a lot of people I wanted to forget. I didn't want to have to deal with. So when I made a list of these persons, when I got to the 8th step, my sponsor and I sat down, and there ended up being a lot more. I wouldn't say a lot, but there were definitely people on there that I didn't put prior. And one of them was a state police officer that I stabbed in 1997. There's a lot of other people on there that I didn't want to put on there, and he said it best. I had to. This is where you got to put it all down. This is where it's got to happen for you, Clint. Every person that you harmed and all that shit. Totally getting honest with myself again, and. And there's an 8-step prayer says we attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. God, help me to become willing to sweep away the debris of self-will and self-reliant living. That will be done for this person as well as for me. Amen. Tell you what, all the steps that came before this, every step had at least for this alcoholic, had something for me happen. This one brought back a lot of further stuff, I think, for me, all the way back to more of my childhood, people and things like that. Knowing that once I did this was where it's going to be important, because these are the people I got to figure out how I'm going to make amends to. So it wasn't just writing names down. It was, how am I going to approach these people from what my sponsor shared with me and what he was showing me to do with some of them. Some of them I had to write letters. Some of them living amends. Actually, there was another police officer involved in that same situation that, since I've been in recovery, I ran into him, and the living amends has already done it worked itself. That's the beautiful part about this program, We get a sponsor, we work the steps, and for me, all of you helped me to go through that book. I called so many of you. I had no clue. I was struggling with reading literature. I know I really like what Chicago John always says, and I'm not trying to steal it from him, but it was the same for me. I could hardly talk, let alone read shit when I first got sober. It took months. And you guys kept helping me. And then, obviously time's flown by. But man, step 8, I tell you. And I think for me, all the steps, you guys helped me on all of them. Because I always had asked questions, because I didn't want it to not work for me. I wanted to know, how did it work? How are you still doing what you're doing? And, I'm just grateful to be here. And I'm grateful to meet you, Adam, and to see your journey. And so many others, Victor and Kristen, and the list goes on and on. And, I say it for myself. At the end of the day, I I hope that I touch somebody today. And as long as I try to do God's will the best I can, I know that today was another good day for me. And I'm just grateful for all the shares prior to mine. And thank you all for being here for this alcoholic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clint. I appreciate you, my friend. And let's see, step 9. Clarence was supposed to do step 9, but Clarence deferred step 9 to Donnie. Donnie was trying to be a speaker last week and couldn't make it. He had another engagement, and I really wanted to hear Donnie, so we're just going to fuck the system here and go ahead and ask Donnie to do step 9 for us today. Donnie?
All right, my name is Donnie. I'm a college in the attic, and Black Experience here in Hawaii is my home group, and I want to thank Clarence for allowing me to speak on step 9. Seeing him, I had asked, one of the joys of Alcoholics Anonymous is it's the steps of freedom that we receive once we work these steps. I've been teaching step study now once a week for 29 years. We go through each step a month, and so I'm used to doing step study and talking about the steps. But if you're going to do it, you got to do it out of the book, so you got to speak out of the book. So in step 9 in the big book, page 63, it says next. Remember, it says next we choose a course of rigorous action. And that's what step 3 said. We choose a course of vigorous action. So one of the action steps out of the big book, page 76, after the 7th step in the big book, said now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. So in the big book, it takes 8 and 9 and put them together. It says, well, when you look at 8 and 9, remember you're looking at that list from step 4. One more time. One more time, I'm going to take a look at that list of self-appraisal. It said, remember now, it was agreed at the beginning that we would go to any length for victory over alcohol, which is on page 7 and 7. Because, yeah, it's going to require me to really put some energy into this. It is harder to go to an enemy than to a friend. But we find it much more beneficial to us when we go to someone and try to close this gap, right? Which means love your enemy, right? It's easy to go to somebody who's going to forgive you, but how about going to your enemy, right? We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit. It says, now, under no condition, still on page 77 in the big book, under no condition, we criticize, we argue. We are there to sweep off our side of the street. Page 78 said, we have made our demonstration by going to a person and tell them I want to do it. It says we done our part. It's water under the dam, which means that if I get kicked up out of here and he don't like what I got to say, and by trying to make amends, I've done my part. On page 79 in the big book, it says, reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any length. Goes back to that word, any length. And remember now, on page 58 in the big book, it said, if you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. Telling you, any lengths. And back to Clint says, remember now, we find, and when we do this, we find a spiritual experience. We ask that we be given strength, direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. You go on page 82, it says, the alcohol is like a tornado. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. We find a man is unthinkable when he says that sobriety is enough, which means there is some work to be done. You know, when we look at the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and we get to page 83 in the big book, it said the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them. If we can honestly say to ourselves that we will right them if we could. And as God people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. And right there, it takes us into that part of the promises. That we are painstaking about this phase of our development, and it goes into the promise. Now, when we go into the 12 and 12, we got a different story. Because the 12 and 12 actually talks about step 9 without using step 8 as a beginner. And it says God's judgment. And part of step 9 is God's judgment, a careful sense of timing, courage, and prudence. These are the qualities we would need when we take step 9. We started making those amends as soon as we got sober. Some of the amends we started doing as soon as we got sober. And on the 12 and 12 on page 84, it said, we must be sure to remember that we cannot buy our peace of mind at the expense of others, though, when we go to someone and make an amends. You know, after almost 34 years of recovery, you know, there should be some things I should be willing to do without worrying about hurting somebody else. It said, let's not talk prudence while practicing evasion on page 85. 86 said, it does not lighten our burden when we recklessly make the crosses of others heavier. Which means I go to them, but I'm making their cross more heavier just to let myself off some of my own pain. So we got to be very careful, step 9. For the readiness to take the full consequences of our past acts, and to take responsibility for the well-being of others at the same time is the very spirit of step 9. That's on page 87. Now I also use the Serenity Bible in my step study. So I've been using that Serenity Bible now for the last 29 years. So I call my step study spiritual step study. In the Serenity Bible, it's pretty easy because it talks about 3 things amends are. One is be sincere. A sincere effort to offer apology. Next is a wonderful bridge builder for more positive future relationships. Because remember, in this 4th step, it said, it's through our twisted relation with family, friends, and society at large, we have hurt it the most. Twisted relation. So now we're trying to bridge them. And the third is effective agent for removing the tremendous weight of guilt, shame, and remorse. We live in it. We live in guilt, shame, and remorse, and because of that, we have this guilt feeling of trying to stay sober. We become unhappy. There's no peace. So some amends we do, and some we may consider making amends. Some we do, and some we may consider, because some just not ready to be done, and I'm thankful for that. There's certain things you can't do. You can't go and make an amend when you know it's going to hurt that other person. And so part of staying sober is being real vigilant about what it really is about. Remember, the step 8 is the list of all, and the step 9 is we use a high degree of discretion when we decide to go out and try to ask somebody for forgiveness. I just want to end this. It says, finally, for me, amends is closing the distance between me and the person who is a child of God. And what that really means is love our neighbor. And if I love that neighbor, I need to go to that person, close the distance. Even if that person done something to me. If that person done something to me, I am still going to free that person of something that he can never free himself of. I'm going to go to him because he'll never come to me and ask me to forgive him. So I'm going to have to go to him. That's your enemy. I'm going to have to go to him so I can close that distance between me and him, because that distance between me and him is the same distance between me and my God. And I don't want no distance between me and my God. So since I done, I'm going to close the distance. I'm going to go to this person. Yeah, if you think this ain't hard work, yeah, it's hard work. But remember, the third step allows us to do the fourth. The third step allows us to do the fifth. The third step allows us to do the sixth. The third step allows us to do the seventh. The third step allows us to do the eighth. And then the third step allows us to do the ninth. And now we're able to live 10, 11, and 12. So thank you there. And thank you, Clarence. I appreciate that.
Wow, Donnie, that was powerful stuff, man. Thank you so much for stepping in and speaking for Clarence tonight. I can see why he wanted you to be a part of this thing. Really powerful stuff. I want to come to that study as well. Let's go to Jim P. in Florida. Jim, were you able to do step 7 for us? Because I messed up.
Yeah, I'll deal with step 7 a little bit, but I'm going to deal with step 10.
Okay.
So, my name's Jim Painter, and I'm an alcoholic. And the man that's sitting here talking to you is not the same man that walked through the door of Alcoholics Anonymous on July the 25th, 1971. Escorted by 2 angels that God had sent to my house at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And Johnny Johnson, always used his last name, agreed to be my temporary sponsor for 42 years. And when he died 7 years ago, I had spent the previous 3 years knowing that he was going to eventually die. He was in his 90s, trying to qualify a sponsor. Sponsors are important. Home groups are important. The relationship with God is important. I have to make wise decisions. Otherwise, I will make bad decisions. And so I had interviewed old timers. And just when Johnny died on November the 6th, 2013, for 30 days I was without a sponsor. And my life just began to become frayed, in spite of the fact that I'm having a conversation with God, that I'm talking to God. So something was missing. And so I finally, one day, just absolutely worn out with whatever the events were that were happening, called the one man that I didn't want to deal with. And I don't think he wanted to deal with me because he had known me since 1975. He was a United States Navy SEAL, and he sat down in my first home group across from me on Saturday nights. I didn't remember him. SEALs didn't talk much back then. And I said, well, I need a sponsor. He said, do you want a sponsor or a counselor? I said, I need a sponsor. I don't know about this counselor deal. He said, meet me at Starbucks. And in an hour and 40 minutes, I told him everything that it took me over 4 years to share with Johnny Johnson. And when I finished, he said, you know, you just spoke for an hour and 40 minutes. I don't know what you said. And I thought I had been really good. I told him about the sexual perversion, about the lying, the stealing, the man I killed. I mean, I gave him I dumped the whole can on him. He said, you know, you talk a lot, but you don't say much. So he has counseled me, and this is where I'm going to deal with step 7, and this is all I'm going to say about it. I have a character defect. I talk a lot, and I don't say a lot, but he counseled me 4 words, and he's instructed me and expects me to, and I wish he were here tonight. Maybe I can get done in this 5 minutes. We'll see. Jim, talk less and say more. I'm done with step 7, okay? Now, step 10. When God was putting this program together, and I'm going to say that again and emphasize that when God was putting this program together, he used Bill W., he used Bob Smith, he used Dr. Silkworth, he used Eddie T., he used the Oxford group, he used Clarence Snyder. And yesterday, I had the privilege of sitting in on a meeting where they examined the history of this program in the early days in the development, the participants, the contribution. And some of those people were pretty self-centered, self-absorbed, and self-serving, and they drank a lot, and they made suggestions that were in their interest and in not necessarily in the long-term interest of a program. It was not something that, and God knew this. And so, one decision at a time, the 164 pages of this big book got constructed. God made sure that it was done right. Step 1, step 2, step 3, made a decision to turn up. Step 4, fearless. And because if you haven't turned your will over to the care of God, you're going to be terrified in step 4. If you have, then it's fearless, and you will move on, and you will take this trash can this septic tank that's on our head and shoulders, and you will clean it out. The inventory, the confession, the absolute, brutal, painful confession. I've done everything in sex except the beat knee men over a fire hydrant. I've done men, women, and beasts of the field. At one time, you couldn't have got me to say that with a gun. That's not the case anymore. I trust God. I have a very powerful relationship with God. And that relationship developed out of necessity. I didn't come here because I wanted to stop drinking. I had absolutely no desire to stop drinking. They said we come here because of 3 things: our liver, or the law. Mine was a combination of the law and my wife. And I thought, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. You know, I wasn't good at step 1. I don't think I'm an alcoholic. But there's something wrong with me, and I hope they'll let me stay till I figure it out. And they did. And guess what I found out? I'm an alcoholic. I had lived in a hellish existence. The only thing that everybody here has traveled the same journey. Drugs and alcohol addiction. The only thing you didn't know about me whenever I stepped through the door was you didn't know my name. That's all. You knew exactly where I'd been, what I'd done. And when God was putting all this together, one step at a time, he knew exactly what needed to be done in order for me to succeed. You know, I can do part of the steps and maybe stay sober for a while. But eventually I'm going to go up through those steps, and that character defect I talked about, step 7, right? You know, talking too much, not saying anything. I hope I'm saying something. Because what I did, I didn't think about what I was going to say, because A long time ago, I figured it out. I pray to God. But meditation, I've never had God set a bush on fire and boom a voice at me. But what he does, I sit down here and every person that spoke tonight had a message that God wanted communicated. God wanted communicated. So if that's where I hear God's voices in a meeting, then I need to treat the meeting maybe like meditation and make sure I don't miss a word. And I do that. Now, when I go through the steps there and we finish with that step 9 and we get to step 10, God said, not everybody is going to do this program long term. They're not going. I incorporated it into my life, but there are days when I struggle. I did prayer and meditation in the morning, and I helped somebody else, and I tried to practice these principles. But at the end of the day, Carebear said something before the meeting, in the meeting before the meeting. He said, I don't want to wake up tomorrow morning chewing on the shit that I went to bed chewing on last night. And that's the purpose of step 10. To ensure that whatever transgressions, whatever issues that I've had that day that I didn't handle in the way that God wanted it handled. See, when I came here, I was the center of the universe. That's no longer the case. God is the center of my universe. And step 10 has two purposes. It cleans up any problems that I've had with today. But it's also a safety net because they say, and I'm convinced of this, that a slip is nothing more than the failure to exercise the steps in reverse. We stop practicing the principles of, we stop working with other people, we stop praying and meditating, we've lost contact with God. Step 10 is the last place where I've got a chance to stop whatever deterioration has been going on in my life. And what I need to do is on a frequent basis communicate with my sponsor. Communicate with other people so that other people can go, Jim, you are screwed up. Part of that communication, step 10, right? Take a personal inventory. And when we're wrong, promptly admit it. I've stopped talking to God. I'm not working with others the way I should be. And I'm one step at a time coming back towards step 1. And I've already exercised some character defects. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in the jackpot that I'm in. See? So step 10 is the safety net that God put in this program to catch us when we stop working the program the way it's intended to be worked. It is my last chance. Because I've already taken my will back. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in the jackpot I'm in, okay? I wouldn't be in a mess. I need to exercise step 10 and be honest. Because it is my salvation. When I fail to exercise God's will in every day of my life. So, and I didn't do much for 7, Adam. But hopefully somebody got something out of 10.
Thank you, Jim. That was fantastic, sir. Everything happens in God's universe for a reason, so we're just going to roll with it because this has been a great meeting. I thank you all so much. We're just going to keep it going. Jersey Joe, would you read step 11 for us and tell us what it means to you? And Nina, are you ready to go with that serenity prayer in Italian? Hold on one second, Joe.
Sure.
Her camera's off. She might have stepped away for a second. We'll have her do it in Italian after you.
I was eating lunch. I'm sorry. I didn't want to like eat in front of y'all with my mouth open.
Right. Serenity prayer in Italian. It's been a while since she spoke it, but she stepped up and she's going to give it a shot. So thank you, Nina.
Okay. So I apologize if I botched this up. Dio, concedimi la salita per accettare le cose che non posso cambiare, il coraggio di cambiare le cose che posso, e la sagreza de conocer la diferencia. Amen.
Beautiful, Nina. If you don't speak it, you wouldn't know. It sounded perfect to me. Absolutely perfect. So thank you so much, Nina. All right, Jersey Joe, take it away with step 11, my friend.
Hey, thank you very much. My name is Jersey Joe. I'm an alcoholic, and I grew up in an Italian family, and I heard a lot of Italian, but I'd never heard the Serenity Prayer in Italian. I heard a lot of other stuff in Italian. But so my sobriety date is March 10th, 1974, and I was just looking it up. 16,911 days. So I'm going to do another 90 and 90 and make it to 17,000, I hope, So I'm so glad to be here. I feel like I'm on the All-Star team. That's what this kind of looks like to me, the All-Star team. Step 11, sort through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Very often, in both the Big Book and in the 12 and 12, Bill will make bold promises for if we do something, and he makes a really bold one in the 12 and 12. This comes from on step 12, and what it says is there is a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit. Now, here's the biggie. But when they are logically related and interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. An unshakable foundation for life. And that's a lot. That's a lot. And what it talks about is the interwoven of these three things. We have self-examination in the 4th step, in the 5th step. It's been really very well covered. In the 10th step, it's when we learn to look at ourselves. We have prayer, right? There's so many places for prayer in AA. We have it in the Serenity Prayer. We have it in so many different spots. I'll tell you my favorite prayer. My favorite prayer, it's a Jersey Joe prayer. It starts out the same way as if I was just calling you on the telephone. If I was going to call up Tom, I'd most likely say to him, and I probably have said it to him many times, "Hi, Tom. How you doing?" And that's the way my prayer starts. "Hi, God. How you doing?" And usually he says, "I'm doing pretty good. I'm God, But how you doing? And that's what and that's where I start with how I'm doing, and that's the way so many prayers start for me. It's just a conversation with God. And the first time I had that conversation with God, when I came into AA, I was an atheist. That's where I came in. And I would get so pissed at the word God. I would want to argue with you on the word God, right? And my sponsor said to me, "Just pick your own word, right? Just pick your own word, Joe." And I picked the word time. And what I did is every place I saw the word God, I would interject the word time. So I would turn my life and my will over to the care of time. And someplace within the first year, it changed for me. And this is the way it changed. I know the exact moment, or I recognized the moment when it was happening. I was away for the first time. It was within my first year sober. I think it was in probably my first 7 months sober. And I was away. I was in a hotel room. I was feeling really lonely. I was just, it was just by myself. And I sat in the room, and I suddenly had a conversation with time. And I started talking to time. And I was getting relief from time. I was getting help from the concept of time. And in that moment, it changed. It changed. It changed to a concept of God. Because suddenly it was no longer a word that I was just using so that it wouldn't aggravate me. It was a source of strength. And I found that same source of strength over and over again in prayer in this program. The last part of that big bold promise he makes is in meditation, right? As the third piece. It's self-examination, it's prayer, and it's meditation. And meditation very often tends to be the hardest one. It's the one that I didn't come to for, I would say, probably 30 years in a program. And I would, even at the beginning, I thought that prayer and meditation were just two words for the same thing, right? And that meditation, but, in its simplest form, prayer is talking to God. And, how you doing, God? And meditation is listening to God. And a good communication with a person, if you think about it, a good communication with a person has prayer and meditation, it's talking and listening, right? It has you talk to someone and you listen to them. That's a good communication. If all I do is talk to someone, that's not a good communication, and that's the way I started out. It'd be, hey, God, let me tell you what I got to do. Boom, 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 boom. I got to go off now. I'll see you later. I got to go do my will. And I'll tell you, I'll come back later on and tell you how it went. Right. And I'm off doing my will. Right. And that was, that's the first part of it, but not the second part. The meditation, for me, meditation is like, it's a disconnection. Right. It's like, when there's something wrong with your computer or something wrong with your phone, or something wrong with your VCR or something like that, what's the first thing you try to do, right? Turn it off and disconnect it. And it's just stopping. It's just a stopping of oneself. And that's what meditation is to me. It's stopping myself. It's stopping my thoughts. It's stopping me. It's a restart. It's a reboot, and it's start over again. And in that pausing, in that stopping, quite often is inspiration. It really is. I get out of the confusion of my own mind. I get out of the confusion of my own thoughts. And very often, what I use for myself is a classic model for meditation, which was given to me by, guess what, an alcoholic priest many years ago. And what he said is that, a good model for meditation is the 4 R's. And it's read, relax, reflect, and respond. And I've tried to put my model together like that and do it for myself a lot of different ways. It's read something of a spiritual nature, right? It can come from the big book. The big book is a spiritual book. It can come from the 12 and 12. It can come from the daily reflection, a 24-hour book. Just read something of a spiritual nature that centers my thoughts. To relax my mind, try to unplug it. And then to respond, to reflect upon it and then respond to it. And that to me is a classic model for meditation. I try to do that. And if you're interested in it, Tom Wicks and I have taken that model and put it into a meeting. So we have an 11-step meditation meeting for 164, and it's the same login as if you go into the 11 o'clock meeting or the morning meeting or the big book meeting. And it's on Wednesdays at 6 o'clock on the West Coast and 9 o'clock on the East Coast. And we take that essentially, that same model of read, relax, reflect, and respond as a way of meditating. And it's a safe place for people to practice the 11th step. And it's not just people that have been around a long time. It's for beginners too. Right? It's a safe spot for it. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of my own thoughts on the 11th step and where I am today. And again, Adam, I thank you very much for the opportunity to do this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jersey Joe. You definitely are on the all-star team, my friend. Powerful stuff there, and I'm definitely going to check out that meditation meeting that you do there. It's a hole in my program, and that's what these meetings do for me. It's like a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and you pick up a piece here and you pick up a piece there, and eventually you see the whole picture. And I'm going to finish this puzzle for sure. So when I sent the email out to all my previous speakers, when I had this idea to do the 12 steps, our next speaker, Kimberlea, she said, what step do you want me to do? And I didn't have to listen to the little voice in my head. I listened to the big booming voice in my head that said, Kimberlea must do step 12. This woman embodies everything about step 12. So Kimberlea, give it to us, girl.
Thank you. I feel like the rookie being called up to God's team to close out the bottom of the 9th and the 7th game of the World Series. My name is Kimberlea, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. And step 12 goes a little something like this. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. I love step 12. The past 8 months have shown me the importance of step 12. And when I was preparing this, I always bring out my big book and I look for where step 12 is in this book. And step 12 starts on the title page and it goes all of the way to the 164th page of this book. The title page of our book says, The Story of. How many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism? That right there is step 12. They're telling the story of how we have recovered. We are here as a direct result of step 12. We stand on the shoulders of the giants who wrote this book. This book is the embodiment of step 12, and this is the message we carry when we practice our 12th step. And boy, has it changed my life. I want to start by reading chapter 7, Working with Others. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. I have experienced that in the past 4 months as a result of my stepping up and being of service to my fellows, all through a little Zoom meeting, the meeting that could. And I understand when you go to page 14 of the big book and it talks about the enthusiasm with which Bill set forth to carry this message to other alcoholics. He had had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And if you have had that spiritual experience, you can't help but want to share it. It is so electric. It is so awe-inspiring. It is so amazing that you can't help but carry it and want to share that message with other people. And as a result, I've been able to see this fellowship grow up amongst us. On March 12th, the world shut down. I had a little Zoom meeting, and I put out a calling saying, I have a meeting if anyone would like to come. And as a direct result, I've seen this program touch the lives of over 100,000 people. And I've been able to feel the exuberance that Bill and Bob must have felt when they wrote this book. And they mailed out the first copy. And they started to get letters back of those people who are now documented in the back of this book, sharing their experience, strength, and hope. And I will close by saying a little sentence from the foreword to the 3rd edition, XXII. Each day, somewhere in the world, recovery begins when one alcoholic talks with another alcoholic, sharing their experience, strength, and hope. This book tells us in a very, very clear fashion how we can recover. And it tells us once we have recovered to go and share it with our fellows. And we do so by sharing our experience, strength, and hope of working this program. I go to way too many meetings where I hear people sharing the stories of all of the misfortune in their lives, and they leave out the hope. We need to pass on our hope. That is the good news this book carries. We can recover. If we don't share that hope, we cannot recover. No one will want this book. No one will open this book, and there will be death. But I have an immunity from alcohol because I carry this message and practice these principles in absolutely all my affairs. And I haven't even reached my 4th year of sobriety. And I have a life wilder than anything I could have ever imagined. And I get to stand with other giants. And I feel as though I don't belong at this table, but I do. Because the simple fact is, I've had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And I carry this message to other alcoholics each and every day of my life. I thank you so much for asking me to speak on Step 12. It has been the highlight of my life and an experience I am glad I did not miss.
Yeah, beautiful, Kimberlea. I knew it. I knew you were Step 12 all the way. Kimberlea spoke at this Detroit International for a half hour and recorded it. I just put the link in the chat box there. Little Miss Variety on YouTube. Kimberlea, is that where you're also going to post this recording as well? Okay, yep. So if you want to get tonight's recording, she'll have that up in a day or two, and you can listen to this thing again. I know I will. And I would like to close out the meeting with the vision for you, as they do at 164. 164 and beyond, the room that Kimberlea has started. If you haven't checked that out, it's 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern time for me. And they get over 300 people in there. I mean, that's a fantastic meeting. The 319 24-hour meeting, somebody posted that in chat as well. Both two great meetings to check out 24/7 on the 319. So a vision for you. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we only know a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. My name's Adam. I'm an alcoholic, and I love you all so much, and thank you all so much for being here tonight and every night for this fantastic series. And I am so blessed beyond belief, and I'll open it all up so you can give all the speakers some love tonight. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Donnie.
Everybody, powerful stuff. Great.
Hi, everyone.
Honored to be
so blessed. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you very much. See you in a few minutes.
Love you guys.
Let's continue this at 164.
Yeah, come on over to 164. We started the meeting already.
There you go.
What's the 164 meeting? Is it in the chat?
Then 164 is in the chat. It's user meeting ID 231-622-5487.
Is there, Kimberly, is there a password on it or no?
No.
Just say Clint. You're beloved.
Thank you, everybody. See some of you at the book study on Tuesday. I
Just don't tell
reposted
them you
it.
know Turtle Victor and they'll kick you out.
Hi, Jamie.
Let's say I'm with Max.
Yeah, Max is hosting tonight.
Oh yeah, Max.
Oh, good. You better sit over there.
We do need to get
From Kangaroo Dave to Jamie to Chicago John, everybody, you guys, powerful shares tonight. I loved it. I needed it. God bless you guys.
You know what's really amazing? What's really amazing is that we're all geographically so wide apart from one another. Just around the same. Amazing. Just amazing.
Adam, we forgot to do the Serenity Prayer in Hawaii.
Oh,
yeah. Well, let's do it. No, I thought George wasn't here.
Oh, he was here.
Oh, shoot.
I have it in Hawaiian. You want me to read it in Hawaiian?